Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Will Dupree in the KXAN Live studio. We're going live now to the Texas state capitol, where Democratic lawmakers from the Texas Senate are speaking, in particular highlighting their efforts to block a GOP-led elections bill. Let's take a listen.
Room for and respect many viewpoints, but we come here together to promote and defend our shared values like we're doing today. Regardless of who stayed, who left last week, we all stand together against Senate Bill 1. As Dean Whitmire put it so well, we've been fighting the war on two fronts. Senate Bill 1 affects all voters, not just Democrats. We stand here not just for Democrats, but for democracy. As many of you have reported on, members of our caucus were in D.C. last week. We did so to join in solidarity with our House Democratic colleagues on the following things. One, to raise awareness of the Jim Crow-style provisions of Senate Bill 1. We also wanted to show that Texas Democrats aren't going to take this lying down. We're going to fight with everything that we have. Two, to delay the bill by using parliamentary tools that help to bring the desired attention to this. Three, to urge Congress, specifically the Senate, to pass federal standards that preserve our civil rights. With complete support and solidarity with our House Democrats, the Texas Senate Democrats are ready to bring the fight right here back to Austin. Despite our best efforts, this bill continues to make it troublesome for our disabled, for our seniors, allows untrained partisan poll watchers to bully, profile, and invade voters' privacy. It bans options that make it easier to vote for working class, like doing away with the 24-hour voting and the drive-through voting. It makes it harder to assist the elderly and disabled, and it does not allow for online voter registration. Now more than ever, as a caucus, we're here to uphold that every promise, not just a promise for certain people, but a promise to all people, that we stand for making it easier at the ballot box, and we will continue to take this fight on. Now I'd like to call on Dean Whitmire.
Thank you, Chair Alvarado. When I took my mask off, I pulled my hearing aids out. So, listen, I'm here today to put a face on where we find ourselves at this point in the special session. I could make a heck of an argument that we should not even be in a special session. It's been my experience that special sessions are for unfinished business. What we're facing is a new agenda, a pretty much regular session. But it is what it is, and I want to first pay my respect to each and every one of my colleagues. We're united as a Democratic caucus in the state Senate. We had a couple of members that had conflicts, but each and every one of us represent close to 1 million people. We're not just a group that came together without a purpose. We're sent here to be the voice of a very diverse state of Texas. And I would reach out to all the stakeholders. I would start with the governor. Governor, you have a responsibility to represent our constituents as well as others. I have worked under 7 governors. The power of the governor's office is great. In '78, as a young state rep, I didn't want to do something. I didn't want to lower the speed limit because the federal government said you will or you'll lose your federal funding. I thought I was representing my district by saying no. Dolph Briscoe called me into his office. He called other House members. We heard each other's views. We came together with a solution. Governor Abbott, you haven't had one Democratic senator in your office. You spent more time with the governor of Florida than you have these honorable members of the Senate and the House. To break quorum as the House has, to go to Washington as these senators have done, is part of the legislative process. Those of us here on the floor last week fought as best we could to represent our districts. We actually opposed one of our Senate colleagues' proposals. I still think Senator Lucio's bill's bad. We fought and were effective on the Senate floor while our colleagues were fighting and talking to the national leadership. We had a two-front war. We will keep all of our options open as we go forward. But we cannot continue to divide this state by parties. We're all in this together. We are concerned about the impact the election proposal will have on Republican voters. Republican seniors will be intimidated by the new requirements of mail ballots. Republican voters will be intimidated by poll watchers. Let's sit down as legislators, the executive branch, Republican, Democrats, independents, and resolve this impasse. The public expects us to do it. But, Governor, threatening to arrest us when you have first no authority to arrest House or Senator members is a non-starter. Welcome us into your office. Let's remember that you represent our district as well as the remainder of our colleagues' district. To my colleagues on the Senate floor, we're the same Democratic legislators that you eat lunch with and pray with every day. We talk about each other's families. Let's get away from the personalizing of this discussion and go back to the Senate floor, hit the restart button, and listen to our concerns. We deserve to be respected and listened to. Some of us have years of experience in elections and representation. So let's thank everyone that's doing their job as they see fit. The House members are very bold. I know the challenges they've had of being away from home. I would close by saying to my Republican colleagues, someday I would hope you feel strongly enough about an issue to walk out. Your Second Amendment arguments, your pro-life arguments, your rural, agricultural, I can go on and on. Someday, when things have changed, where you may see, my Republican brothers and sisters, that the only way you can stop something and message something to the rest of the state and nation is to walk out. Republicans have done it in Oregon in the last year. So let's lower our voices, as I raise mine, and get back to work and doing the people's business. Thank you for each and every one of you for standing tall and doing your job.
Thank you, Dean. Love the passion. Next, please, Senator Miles, join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. Good to see all my colleagues. And I do mean all of my colleagues. I want to commend each and every one of our colleagues for whatever front they took, whatever position they took, and of defense they took in supporting our House members and to defeat Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 3. Let's, y'all have now watched me as a senator for 4 years now. And one thing you know that you're always going to get from me is a crystal clear message. So let's cut to the chase and talk about what this really is. This is a discriminatory, divisive, suppressive, an intimidation bill focused at minorities, especially African Americans. This is a Senate bill that was designed and created because what took place in Harris County, my district, Senate District 13, the largest Democratic box in the state of Texas. Well, my leadership, my Democratic leadership in Harris County, senators, were innovative and thought outside the box. on how to increase our numbers at the polls, at the same time protecting our citizens from COVID. That's what this is about. There's no real, the big story, or as has been said so many times, the big lie. The big lie is there really isn't any voter discrimination, voter scandals. There really isn't any fraud going on in Harris County or any other parts of the state of Texas. What's really going on, the big fact is fear factor. The fear factor that we're increasing minority and Democratic numbers by the millions. The fear factor that 5.7 million people who are registered to vote, we're about to tap into. The big fear factor that 1.3 million people who are eligible to vote that are not registered to vote, we have ways of getting ready to tap into them. And when we tap into them, the leadership in this state and other states around this country is going to change. That's the big fact. That's what this bill is all about. So let's be true here. Let's be real. It's about intimidation. It's about rolling the hands of time backwards. Critical race theory, rolling back the times of hand. The hands of time, boys. Cinnamon index. So I want to applaud all of my Democratic colleagues, both in the Senate and especially in the House. The heroes and sheroes that are in the House. And we went down, yes we did, some of us, to support them, to stand by their side, to bring light to this issue. And it must work, because y'all are here. Anytime people's civil rights, civil liberties, and our democracy is threatened, best believe Democrats are going to stand. We're glad that you're here. We want y'all to stay with us, because believe one thing, we're going to continue to work, we're going to continue our faith, and we're going to continue to fight. And we want you to be right there with us. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Miles. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank all of you for being here. Just a little plug. I hate masks. I hate masks. We're here because not enough people have gotten the vaccines. Get the damn vaccines. I'm really tired of it. I know everyone else here is. Back to the subject. We'll get back to vaccines and pandemics in just a second by analogy. I'd like to address in a little bit of detail what we're doing here. What are we doing here? The big theme that we're hearing from proponents of the bill is that we got to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So I want to get down to some of the little bit of the detail and a little bit of the things that have been said on the other side. So let's start with easier to vote. I've heard a lot about it. Making it easier to vote by expanding hours. For the first time ever, we're expanding hours, making it easier for people to early vote. Let's take a look at that. 41 counties are going to see their hours of voting expanded. 40 of them are Republican counties. One of them's a Democratic county. Thanks, guys. 3 counties are going to see their voting hours restricted. That's Bexar County, El Paso County, and Harris County. They're populous, they're urban, and they're Democratic. There goes the argument that we're really here about making it easier to vote. So not only do they do almost nothing to help alleviate the congestion. We have 6-hour lines of people trying to vote in urban counties. We have innovative, inventive local election officials figuring out ways to get people to safely, securely, and yes, with integrity to vote in these urban areas. And what these bills do, what this whole push is to stop that from happening. We've heard from my colleagues on that subject, but let's look at what they did. They're restricting the 24-hour measures, temporary structures, criminalizing, this one really gets me, criminalizing county registrars from sending out vote-by-mail applications. Think about that, because what is okay is for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or candidates to send out vote-by-mail applications. Is that a higher level of integrity when the parties are controlling who gets vote-by-mail applications? Or should it be a neutral government agency that sends these things out? It's just sending the wrong message, folks. A lot of this is about sending the wrong message. So what about the hard-to-cheat factor? We've been talking about this for 6 months. The 22,000 hours the Attorney General spent looking for fraud, and they're prosecuting like 46 cases. Most of them are because people changed their addresses. Can you imagine what would happen if we spent 22,000 hours looking for a COVID case, we found a handful of them, and then had statewide mask mandates, shut down restaurants? It would be chaos, which is, I think, what's going to happen to our electoral system. So what are we doing here? Let's keep in mind, we're not just talking about Senate Bill 1. I appreciate my Republican colleagues wanting us to read the bill. I think that's an excellent thing for everyone to do. Let's also read House Bill 3, because we're dealing with both of them. And as we saw last session, we cannot be assured that what gets filed or what gets brought to the floor or what passed last week while the Senate was in session is going to be what comes at the end of the day, because we saw what happened at the end of the regular session. We saw really weird, really bad provisions come into the bill in the form of a conference committee report that no one had ever seen. In fact, most of the Republicans who were pushers of the bill said, I don't know where this came from. Well, that doesn't really reassure me a whole lot, because I don't know what's coming later. So yeah, we are concerned about what's coming here. And when we're dealing with the process, we have to take into mind both bills and whatever else might come down the pike. Is this about election security after all? I don't think so. I think it's about aggression. It's about riling people up, rallying behind something other than what we're really supposed to be here for. And a little image comes to mind. I was driving to the YMCA this morning, and parked in front of me at a red light was a truck. And on the back of that truck was an American flag, and it's all black. Black stars on a blacker background and black stripes on blacker stripe background. And is that the new emblem of our democracy? This angry rendition of the American flag? Because I feel like that's what's becoming of our voting process. We're riling people up. We're making them mistrust each other. We got poll watchers who can bring charges against election workers. The election workers are there to keep law and order. This is an anti-law and order bill, folks. I don't understand some of this stuff. We are all for secure elections. None of us want voter fraud. None of it is tolerable. But at some point, what I think we're seeing is some other kind of agenda dressed up as election security. Is it racist? Is it partisan? I mean, I hear people say, very sincerely, no. All I can say is it sure feels like it. It sure feels like it when 40 counties get their Republican vote expanded and 1 Democratic county and 3 Democratic counties get their vote constricted. It sure feels like it's partisan. It sure feels like it's racial when most of these provisions are aimed at Harris County, where there was a very large vote turnout among minorities who voted Democratic. So if it's not intended to be that way, maybe we need to fix it up so it actually isn't that way. Should I not be worried about it? Is it not really going to have any effect? I saw a bunch of trucks push a Biden bus off the road. I'm worried about those people becoming poll watchers. It bothers me. Yeah, I'm riled up about it. How about the oath? A poll watcher has to take an oath. I promise not to mess with the election process. Guess what happens to them if they break their oath? Nothing. Nothing. If you're an election worker and you violate any provision of the election code now, you can be subject to civil penalties, monetary penalties, injunctive relief. But if you are a poll watcher and you break your oath not to interfere with the process, nothing. You might get kicked out, but under the House bill, you have to get a warning first. This is an imbalance of power, folks. The last thing I want to address. We've heard many times that so-called restrictive measures in the past didn't have a restrictive effect because voter turnout increased. Therefore, restrictive voter requirements didn't cause any problems. Folks, if you put on a heavier pair of shoes on my feet, I can still run faster. It doesn't mean the shoes didn't slow me down. Yeah, we had a bigger turnout, but it would have been even bigger if we hadn't had more restrictive voting laws. What's missing from this conversation is sincere measures to facilitate the vote. The real measures that are in the Barbara Jordan Act. The real measures that would bring Texas into the 21st century. Online voter registration, I've heard it said Texas for the first time has online voter registration. You know what? There's some truth to that. It's a partial truth because the courts forced us to do it. The court said you're out of line with the law because the law requires you to have online. If you're able to renew your driver's license online, you also get to register to vote online. But if you are a first-time voter wanting to register to vote as a standalone transaction, you still can't do it online. And I have not yet heard any excuse to not get that done. There are an untold number of other things that we could do to make this better, and they're missing. Folks, we take election security so seriously, but we're not in favor of rigging the game in favor of one party because that lacks integrity.
Thank you, Senator Johnson, for setting the record straight. And our final senator to speak, Senator Gutierrez.
Thank you all very much for coming today. I just want to tell you, each and every one of these members behind me, they want fair, accessible, and secure elections. We've been doing this since I've been in this building since 2009. Every year it's one scary monster after the other that the Republican Party wants to pretend is some kind of relief for alleged voter fraud. You heard Senator Johnson talk about the 22,000 hours. Let me tell you about fraud. The only fraud that has been perpetrated on the people of Texas is the fraud that Greg Abbott is telling all of us that there's the boogeyman out there and it comes out every election cycle. That is the only fraud that is facing the people of Texas. And yet he fails to do his job. He fails to do the most important things that we needed to do this regular session, not to mention this special. And that was relief for Winter Storm Uri. We passed, as much as this group fought, we got a watered-down weatherization program when we should have had federal guidelines, FERC and NERC guidelines, on winterizing our electric utility companies and our gas providers. We got a bill that gave some money to some of these companies, supposedly to pass it on through to consumers, when all it really did was generate equity for those companies, liquidity. When us, along with a one-time bipartisan group of senators, decided to do a ratepayer relief program, the governor said, mission accomplished on Winter Storm Uri, I'm done. The most pressing things affecting the Texas consumer of this year, and possibly of this decade, and possibly of this century, was when we lost 200 Texans when this man was at the helm. And he has done nothing about it in the regular and nothing about it in a special. So Governor Abbott, where's our special session for winterization to make sure that this never happens again? Where's our special session for health care? We have the highest rate of uninsured in the United States here in Texas. Most Republican governors have passed some version or plan of Medicaid expansion. Some have even gone and called it by their own last names. I don't care if it's the Abbott plan, the Texas plan, or something. I can tell you that Nathan Johnson's got a hell of a plan. Do that one. Do something. Did we get a special plan? Did we get a special session for health care? No, we didn't. 2020, we saw the highest rate of mass shootings in the state of Texas. And when our own lieutenant governor, after they did all of their governor's roundtables and all their work sessions on this, even the lieutenant governor said, you know what? We do need universal background checks. The lieutenant governor, did you ever think you'd hear Dan Patrick say that? But he did. What did we get? We didn't get a damn thing. A lot has been said about what we did and where we were and what we were doing. I can tell you that each one of these members was working. We worked to talk to Joe Manchin, to try to get him to pass the John Lewis Act, try to break the filibuster, to try to get the For the People Act, and if you didn't like that one, do the John Lewis Act, and if you didn't like that one, come up with the Joe Manchin plan. Something that brings back Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act that we lost in Shelby. A lot of people say, well, these guys aren't working over there. We worked harder than that man in the central office has ever worked in his entire life. 6 of us were with the Department of Energy. 4 of us were with the Department of Education. Several of us went to the Health and Human Services Department. When it came to coming up with solutions for education, the winter grid, fixing the grid, it was this body right here that was working. And the rest of them were vacillating. The rest of the Republicans were vacillating. And so this is where we are now. And this is where we are today. And my message for Greg Abbott, you want to bring us back, Governor? Fix the damn grid. Do something about health care. Do something about mass shootings in Texas. The people of Texas are demanding that you get to work, Greg Abbott. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gutierrez, for reminding people of the important issues we should be working on. We'll open it up for questions, and please, members, feel free to step up and answer as well.
Was it always part of the plan to return to Texas before the end of the special session? And also, do you feel you missed an opportunity to speak out against the election bill on the floor on behalf of your constituents?
Well, there's some members here that were on the committee, and they can address that. But, you know, we did fight for something, as Senator Gutierrez said. As far as the coming back, you know, it depended how many of us were leaving and how many were staying. That had a lot to do with the return. Anybody want to talk about the grid?
In terms of
The question. Anybody want to add to that?
in terms of the
In terms
election.
of, you know, feeling like you may have missed a chance to speak.
No, I mean, the reality is this, we had senators here that were speaking concerning that. And what's gonna happen is that this is gonna be, we're gonna have to do this again, okay? There's gonna be another session concerning this. We'll have an opportunity to kind of review what was said in the regular session, the first special session, to be prepared for the second called special session.
Some of you have mentioned governor powers, and I'm wondering if we could kind of tie the pandemic powers and the governor conversation together. Should Texas adopt stronger measures to rein in the governor's powers during a pandemic or a similar disaster?
Well, that issue was actually addressed by Senator Birdwell, Hall, and the Republican base was very concerned about the governor's actions during the pandemic. We think the governor should listen to the people of Texas. We're wearing masks today because the people of Texas are afraid of the virus. And we would urge the governor to listen to the people of Texas, the local officials who are charged with that responsibility. Back to your term, we decided very on we wanted to be where we could be most effective. It's a personal decision. I remained here to fight. Saturday morning I was in an African-American district fighting a landfill expansion, honoring John Lewis Saturday night, while these colleagues were working the Hill. So there's no ideal model. You have to use your judgment. You got to listen to your district and be as effective as possible. And as I said when I was up here earlier, we will continue to monitor events. We keep all of our options open. I've been in at least 3 quorum breaks, which we did not have to break quorum because the House did such a great job. I broke quorum in '81 over redistricting. They were merging and pairing members unnecessarily. So to protect the body and those members, we left. Obviously, 2003, we left. I did what I thought needed to be done, the most effective position for my district. 35 days, I determined my most effective position and role would be on the Senate floor. So as we stand before you today, we're doing our jobs in the most effective fashion possible. We're reaching out, obviously, to the other side to join us in being effective. But we cannot have this continuing division and breakdown. As I said, Governor, you need to call us in. You need to meet us. We would like to go over the bill. I'd like to emphasize to him what poll watchers are going to do to his voters. You know, this does apply to the primary. And the Republican Party is very divided. They've got some very radical voices that might want to become poll watchers in Republican primaries. We have to guard Texans and be truthful with them that this is not about voter fraud. It's as Senator Boers and Johnson and others have so eloquently pointed out and documented, that is to suppress voters. Changing hours and days has nothing to do with fraud. It has to do with convenience and availability of people to their voting process.
How much is it? Is it weighing on you guys that your staff's Republican and Democrat, you're going to get paid on September 1st?
Well, you know, they may not get a check from the state, but every one of us is bound and determined to take care of our staffs. Mm-hmm. We care about our staffs, and I know what that cost is going to be, and I know that the members behind me will stand up and take care of their staffs. The fact that the governor is acting like a dictator, because that's like dictatorial. I mean, what are you thinking? You're just going to wipe out the legislative branch of government?
We're not in Cuba. We're not in communist China. So, you know, one, you can't arrest us, and two, you can't wipe out a branch of government. So I'm not worried about that. To your question, we were in Washington in order to highlight the differences between what Texas already has. So when we met with Senator Manchin, he did not realize how restrictive voter ID laws are here. He did not realize to the extent that the poll watchers would have free reign, the criminalization of election judges. So a lot of the folks in Washington aren't aware of how bad the bill actually is. And so what happens is, in these little snippets and sound bites, you can't understand the severity of the matter. And so that's why it was important for us to go and help deliver the message and show support. But the fact of the matter is, just like you see here, all of us here are united against this bill. Why? Because it suppresses votes. It makes it harder for our constituents to vote, and we will stand and we will fight wherever it takes to make sure that no one who is eligible to vote is turned away or made to feel intimidated by their decision to vote however they want to vote.
Senator, do you think we've changed any minds in D.C., like Senator Manchin and others who you talked to?
I think we definitely had an impact. I think we're not the only ones to say that. If you watch Senator Klobuchar, she talked about the fact that, you know, so yeah, I think we had an impact.
And some of us,
Not just in D.C. We've changed the minds of people in America.
Right.
Okay, we've got national coverage on what's going on right here in the state of Texas. So people all across this country understand what's going on, and they're writing and emailing and supporting us.
And some of us, it was our second trip in a month, I think, to D.C. So we had, you know, sometimes 2 meetings with senators we'd already talked to, but it just raised the awareness. I am friends with Senator Sinema. She is very key in this debate. We had a phone conversation, and she's following what we're doing, but I was able to deliver an even clearer message and clarify some things so she realizes the severity of this bill. And also, hopefully what we're doing sends a message to other legislative bodies across the state. You don't just have to lie down and take this. You can fight. And that's why we've chosen, some of us, we took our fight to D.C., and then some of our members stayed here and fought on the floor.
Carol, I have to say something about that, too. We didn't just go there to change the minds of Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema or anybody else. We also went to learn about what they're thinking, learn about their process, and what are the other possible avenues. If the filibuster's not going to break, how do we get there? How do we move something else? Who else do we need to talk to? So it's not, I don't think I've ever changed anybody's mind about anything. I might try, but as Dean Whitmire said, this is a process. And we went there to engage in that process. We learned a lot, and I think they heard from us, and I think there is more momentum, certainly more light on the subject than there's ever been before. So I think it was successful.
The House broke quorum this time. Is the Senate discussing taking on that role the next session?
Let me just say, Madam Chair.
Sure.
All aisle twos are on the table, okay? And we want to, I think that what we want to have happen is what Senator Whitmire said, is to sit down with the governor, to look at the Barbara Jordan Act, Fair Election Act, look at Senate Bill 1 and see whether the two can, and also House Bill 3, see whether we can bring together all 3 of them to something that makes sense for all Texans. So all twos are still on the table. What we would prefer to do is to sit down with the governor and come up with something that's going to be agreeable to all Texans and truthful to all Texans and expansive of each Texan's voting rights and accessibility.
Going back to the governor's powers, after saying that everything that needs to be done was done on grid reform, declining to add that to the special session, he then kind of turned around and ordered his appointee to the PSC to take a number of steps, several of them that seem to go beyond to do what the legislature decided not to.
The bottom line is, and Senator Gutierrez did such a great job, we are no better prepared for the next freeze than we were the last one. For the governor to say it's behind us, we know better. The PUC was enlarged, ERCOT was reorganized, everybody asked them to go study. They're not even supposed to have reports back to September 22. Governor, legislature, we have a cold freeze winter coming between now and then. So, you know, as a part of our business-like approach, we want to tend to the availability, since the last session, ERCOT's already warned people to lower their use of energy. What kind of confidence does that restore to the public in Texas? What kind of message does that send to corporations, businesses that might consider relocating to Texas? It's a public safety issue, it's an economic development issue, and it's being ignored by Governor Abbott. Instead, we're playing politics with the precious right of voting. So, you know, we need to have a press conference, a full-blown press conference on where we are on the reliability of energy, because quite frankly, the people I represent are scared. When you get a warning in June, when we just adjourned in May, and nothing's been done but to kick the issue down the road, kick the can down the road, folks, we got some serious business in the state of Texas, and the election process is not one of them. Everyone in this building was elected under the current rules. Didn't hear a word about the measures when they were running for office. It's only since the November results, and we know what that's all about. So
And let's make it plain.
we're ready to go to work.
Let's make it plain. Let's bring it down to home. If you try getting a home generator in the state of Texas, it takes 12 to 14 to 22 weeks. People of Texas don't have confidence in our governor or ERCOT. 12 to 24 weeks to get a home generator. That's making it plain.
And most people can't even afford
And
it.
they can't afford it.
So let's go to work.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey there, everybody, and good afternoon. Will Dupree once again in the KXAN Live studio. This is the conclusion of that news conference from the Texas state capitol, where the state's Democratic lawmakers in the Senate just held a news conference to talk about different things that are happening at the moment. Again, these Texas Senate Democrats are here in Austin holding that news conference after some of them went to D.C. last week. Dozens of House Democratic lawmakers are still in the nation's capital, which is preventing the Texas House from continuing on with business because the Democrats broke quorum. Just want to point out that key difference. I'm seeing a number of comments about that. Again, these Texas Senate Democrats speaking from the Texas state capitol. Coming up in just a few moments, we are expecting Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick to hold a news conference. It's unclear what exactly he will be discussing as we await for that to begin at about 2:30 or so. We will be streaming that as well, so you can tune right back in to us here on KXAN Live to carry those comments. What I should say is one notable thing that was discussed there is that Senator Royce West, who's from the Dallas area, is suggesting, maybe for the first time in what we've heard lately, that the Democrats would like to meet with Governor Greg Abbott and come up with some sort of compromised voting bill, taking versions from Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 3, and also looking at what the Democrats proposed somewhat recently with their Barbara Jordan Act. Whether or not the governor will take up that offer remains to be seen. However, earlier today when he was speaking at a bill signing event in Houston, he did say that he will continue to call one special session after another, unless the agenda items, the priorities that were he laid out for this latest special session are not passed. So again, we'll have to follow up on that. We thank you all again for watching here on KXAN Live. We'll be back in just a few minutes, to carry Lieutenant Governor Patrick's news conference. So please stay with us. We'll see you back here then. Everybody, take care.